Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of SongDive, which is a new podcast between myself, Allie, and producer, musician, songwriter, engineer extraordinaire Sarah Tudson of the band Illuminati Hotties. Now, they just released a record called Power, which is fantastic, and I wanted to ask her questions about it. I also just released a record called Every Dog, and so she is going to ask me questions about my record. And we're going to start with the first track on each of our respective albums and kind of work through the track list. So in this show, we're going to learn about the songwriting inspiration, whether it's lyrical or otherwise, production inspiration and techniques, stuff like that, and even down to like the engineering and the people who played on the records. So I hope you enjoy the first ever episode and my conversation with the great Sarah Tudson. Live! Okay. Well, we're here at our first podcast episode of SongDive. We're here. And if you're tuning in for the first time, which you have to be,
this is the first time.
Yeah, this is the first time we're tuning in. So we hope this is the first time you're tuning in. Our podcast is supposed to be a chance for us to each kind of explore the songwriting background, music production background, and maybe even some geeky engineering stuff as it pertains to the new albums that we are each respectively putting out. Sarah's putting out, or just put out, Power by Illuminati Hotties, which is an amazing record. Still been listening to it all the time. And then myself, I'm putting out, in about a month, I'm putting out an album called Every Dog. And my band name is Allie. So, without further ado, we figured we'd start with Sarah's track. We're going to do the first track of each of our records. So, the first track on the Illuminati Hotties record, Power, is called Can't Be Still. And I had a question for you, just starting off kind of broadly, but just about like the background for the song, any inspiration lyrically or otherwise. What were your experiences that kind of led you to the point of making this song?
I should have pulled up like the original little demo, which was just about a minute long. And it was just like the first guitar riff you hear without the like harmony thing, and kind of that looping, like I guess it's a chorus, but also later it kind of becomes like, you know, then there's like another chorus that kind of like makes that chorus feel like not the chorus anymore. But yeah, it just started with the sort of like I can't be still, like looping, and it was, I think, just like early on in like the process of writing Power, the album, I didn't really have like a clear direction, and that is a feeling that I feel and that I think that like seems like other people relate to that emotion of like restlessness and sort of just like frenetic, like trying to glue together pieces of your life or your schedule or whatever. So yeah, it just like really started simple. It started using like the computer more than I usually do. Like,
okay.
Just because I try to write away from the computer because I don't want to get stuck in like engineer brain where then I'm like trying to make something sound really good and I
Same.
sort of lose the thread of making a song, you know?
100%, yeah. As soon as you set it to loop, it's like the writing inspiration is gone for me, so I really try to keep the computer away.
Yeah, exactly. But in this case, there is a drum loop that kind of remained in the final recording, as well as like some kind of like slackery, like kind of angular-ish riff rock guitar.
Yeah. Well, speaking on the note of the drum sound, like, so that was a loop that started from the beginning. So are those samples you got from elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a loop that I actually think I took from this producer, John Joseph, who worked on another song on the album with me. And he just makes like really fun and cool drum samples, and he'll put them up on Gumroad, I think is the website, or I think it's called Gumroad.
Okay. I'll check that out.
But yeah, like he has sample packs up there. I did a pack with him a while back of like, it wasn't really drums, but it was kind of just like noise and like feedback and shouts and like, things to supplement your songs with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
cool.
but this was just a loop, I think, from his sort of like rotation of drum packs.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's super cool. Okay, yeah, because I didn't know if they were played like by a human or not, but they definitely have this like authentic live feel, even though these sounds are kind of otherworldly, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like his loops feel pretty live. I think he doesn't like he'll have a drummer come in and do like a day, and he won't like grid it up. He'll just kind of like let it feel like a human.
Yeah.
And then there is drums played over the top that Jason McGurr played. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like both, especially like in the like verses and the like C section, kind of like big chorusy sections.
Yeah. You mentioned Jason McGurr on drums, so I saw from a post that he had online. He's like famously the drummer of Death Cab for Cutie. But he mentioned that there was like a marathon drum tracking session for this album. Was that because you were on a time crunch and he just like, you had to get it done?
Yeah, I mean, so the drums that I got from working with Jason were all like, basically like I tacked 3 days onto a session. I went up to Washington and recorded the Eliza McLam LP at Bear Creek. And then I just like put 3 days on the end for my own stuff. And Jason, who has become a friend and who was a fan, and also we did a few shows with Death Cab, so like we got to meet them. He lives in Washington State. And so I just kind of like sent him a text and I was like, is there any chance that you play on other people's records or our home at this time? And like, basically we just slammed through like 30 songs and I just got as much material from him as possible. He pulled up with a pickup truck, literally a full truck bed, like with the, thing that you, like the shell on top of drums and mics and percussion and like all his sort of like fun, I know you're a drummer too, and it was like I was like drooling, like like he just has the coolest stuff, and we just like shuffled through songs and like there were some that we focused in on a little more, but then there was some where it's just like grab like all the thinnest drums you have, like let's do something really tiny and like do like a bunch of passes and then move on to the next song quickly. So I think he was like he's a very like deliberative drummer. I don't know if that's a word. He's a deliberate drummer. And he asked for some roughs ahead of time, and I think he like, did his best to learn that, like my sort of like random rough recordings, but also like stuff had changed by the time we got in the studio. Sure. And like
you're like, oh, actually it's a double now. He's like,
exactly. Exactly. And like, I think that just from talking to him, obviously on the Death Cab records, he's such like a part writer, but also with, he played on a couple Tegan and Sarah records. And he's like done some other work where Chris Walla was producing. And I think he really like wants to make like the most musical drum part possible. And that involves usually learning a song for more than like 5 minutes before playing it.
Yeah. And also I feel like as a drummer, like, I don't know if you've been doing it long enough, maybe you're getting to the point where you're getting out of your head a little bit more. I think probably many different types of musicians can relate, but like actually listening to the song and what other people are doing and thinking of like, how can you serve the song, that classic saying. I feel like that really 100%. Comes into play, like especially in a studio.
Yes. Yeah. And he's such a like inventive percussionist too. Like I remember sending him a bunch of stuff like once I went home and like sort of edited things and got things to a certain point, I sent him those tracks again, and he like sent me a bunch of layers of like fun percussion that he just recorded at home. And like that also was just so helpful, and he was so generous like with his time and with his like enthusiasm to be a part of the project. And I was really grateful for that, he really is like one of the best, you know.
Yeah. True legend, a modern legend.
True legend.
Well, thanks so much for going into that. That's really interesting. Yeah, I remember seeing like a video of, I think you sent me a video via email or something, and I remember seeing like a really small snare, like looked like a toy. That's really
he
fun.
had it all, like really like just a wide range. You know, you can go so crazy with like drum sounds, and like he like knows his tools very well. So it wasn't like, you know, like I could say something absolutely nuts, like more gravelly, and he would just be like, okay, and like grab some stuff, and it sounded right, you know?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah, just speaking on like the production of the song and how it really tends to like grow, I feel like, very like pop oriented, and just like its form. It's really lean. It's really like exciting and fun to listen to the whole time. And like each section really, like even the first verse that comes after the first chorus, like really surprises me. And I always like, it feels so good when it goes in. I was just wondering, like, is that stuff that you generally like have in your mind ahead of time? Or are you kind of like producing and mixing like as you go and making things, you know, like getting contrast that way? Or is it more like an arrangement thing you talk about with a band ahead of time? That's kind of a long question.
know, I think with this song, because the like Can't Be Still hook was so strong, like in the way it was, I was like, I need to return to that a bunch, but it needs to kind of feel compact every time. And so unlike maybe another style where the hook is the biggest part, like I felt like it had to be like this weird little thing that just kind of kept appearing, and the verses feel more sort of like chill or like regular indie rock pop kind of thing, you know, like like it was more strummy, and like the riff kind of turns into like the chords instead of just like the single note thing. And so I just had like those two sections, and I feel like I had maybe also that end like guitar solo thing.
Okay, yeah.
And then I was like, that's not enough. Like, I actually feel like there's something that needs to go bigger again.
Yeah.
And so then I wrote that third sort of like section. Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, okay, now we have a chorus. And I love like that form. Like, I feel like it shows up over and over again in like great pop songs, where it's like you think you're hearing the chorus, and then they're like, actually, this is better, you know, and like suddenly 2/3 of the way through the song, you're like, whoa, you know?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like, at least in terms of melody, like a lot of like pop songs will have such great melodies the whole time that like the pre-chorus or whatever comes before a chorus, you're like, that was good enough to be a chorus. I don't know, it's just like you can really like sustain yourself on each part.
Exactly.
Well, cool.
Yeah, and that's important to me. You know, I think that like no section should be forgettable, and I know that there are people who make music that is not the point, you know, for them. Like maybe it's more diary style, like long form.
Totally, we'll get into that in a sec. Yeah.
But like, you know, for this song and for this record, I was like, I do want every song to have that like chorus oriented hookiness, like in a way that a lot of pop writers talk about their writing.
That's really cool. I think I used to like, as much as I've been a fan of pop music my whole life, I think I like undervalued those qualities and those goals of like just trying to be able to make someone happy and listening to the thing the first time. But now like I feel like that's actually a really admirable thing, and it kind of avoids the sense of like self-indulgence when you're writing, you know. And I've definitely been like that snotty like indie bitch who's just like, I really don't care what anyone thinks, like I just need to like, I just want to get this out. But then, and that's fine, but then if you're releasing the music somewhere, like if you're putting your music out into the world, you're expecting that at least someone's going to hear it. And to have like no care for how they feel about it, that just seems a little like dishonest in and of itself.
I mean, I think even the like sort of wildest like outsider artists
Yeah.
of the, that, like, I'm thinking of, like, Burial or Aphex Twin or something, like,
Yeah.
there is something about releasing music that, like, there's an element of, like, I want someone to find this, even if it's not, I want it to be on Kiss FM or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want it to be able to resonate with somebody.
Yeah, and or like there's like it's like, like there's sort of like that like there's like a trope of like art isn't finished until it's like released, like you could paint a painting for 100 years, but like, so it's never going to feel done necessarily, but if you just say like, okay, the gallery is next month, it's going on a wall, like, then I feel like there's sort of there's like something about like releasing music that it's like, even if the general public doesn't hear it, like someone will, and there's like a benefit to that for us as artists,
Yeah, several probably. Okay, last question. Oh wait, actually I was wondering about the vocal production first. Just if you just wanted to go over, like, obviously the vocals are quite multi-tracked and stacked. Mm-hmm. That's a better term. There's multiple vocals going on, and I feel like it sounds really smooth, but it's still kind of popping out at the edge of the speaker.
Totally.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is all like sort of, again, just like getting inspiration from pop production, where it's like the vocal is the most important thing. And like, yes, I want the guitars to be big. Yes, I want the drums to be smacking. But like, humans connect to vocals more than anything else. Just like our brains are just wired to like pick up words and like, and the frequency range that humans speak in. And there's something to like, what's the word? Like, there's something about like making that arrangement feel big, but also even when it's only like a double track vocal or like a single with like stuff doubled wide, like that, I'm like, nothing is more important than that, especially on this song, but on a lot of the songs on Power, it was like, even when I was taking a turn for like a more indie-fied thing, I was like, the vocals just need to be in the front. Like, I just want it to feel like pop in that way, where it's like, it can be almost like ignorant of the instrumental,
Yeah.
And like, like there's so many great songs I can think of where like the vocal is huge and you're kind of like tricked into thinking the guitars are huge, but actually when you think about it, it's like everything is pretty quiet compared to the vocal,
Yeah. Yeah, or like kind of puny, like singular other elements.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm really interested in how that style of production will be able to be replicated live for artists just in general who like want to do that. Obviously you can have different people singing on stage. I've worked with people who are like, well, it's just me, so I'm gonna want to put a lot of harmonies like in the tracks, that kind of thing. Like, have you been working on anything like that for your live set?
Yeah, that. I mean, right now I'm like literally in the thick of it. Is like, how do we make this feel like the record live, but also interesting? Like I think that there's like a faction of people who go to shows and they're like, I want to see the record. And there's a faction of people who go to shows and are like, why did I just sit through that when I could have listened to the record,
Sure, yeah, they want something different.
Yeah, like, or at least to feel like the little sort of like live, loose, like, it's interesting. And like, I've been thinking about this a lot with like the Taylor Swift show, where it's like very meticulously rehearsed, very, very like high production value. Like, there is zero room for error.
Right. There's full choreo and like pyro and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like so like down to the second, things are timed with lights and with what stage props and everything. And like, but at the same time, she does like bonus like secret bonus tracks at every show, and they're like kind of always different. And she obviously has such a wide catalog that she can kind of like pull random songs. But it's like this weird blending of like I'm gonna assume that the general population at a Taylor Swift show wants to hear the album, basically. Like they don't want like an indulgent guitar solo in the middle of you know?
Play the hits, but also some novelty is appreciated, even if it comes as a surprise, I think.
Exactly. And like go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, people are like, I recognize this melody. Because I've seen some of her videos live where she'll do a different rendition of something, take like the same vocal melody but have different chords, make them like super minor-y until the chorus or something, where on the recording like maybe they're very major or something like that.
Exactly.
And it's really exciting to see.
It's crazy. And that is like then pulls this demographic that's like, that's the type of brain that like is obsessed with Grateful Dead, you know, or like that's like one of the other sort of like biggest live acts in the world that I can think of, where it's like people will follow them for an entire tour, you know, and it's because they do something different every night and you don't get the same show ever. And maybe they don't have fans that are like appreciative of like the recording, but they do have fans that are like collecting like decades worth of bootleg tapes of a show, you know?
Yeah. Sort of like the jazzer spirit.
Yeah,
I can't speak exactly on that as a real non-jazzer who just knows some different chords. But yeah, like the spirit of improv in music and wanting to create something different each time you play. I mean, obviously, like inevitably each show is going to be different. You're in a different setting, different people are there. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last question I had was just about the whistling. In the track. Yeah, just wondering if that was you and some friends.
No, that was me. I just did a whistle, and then I did another whistle, a little harmony whistle.
Yeah. It sounds great.
Thanks. Somebody else asked me about the whistle, too, and they were like, what's up with that? And I was like,
what's up with that?
People love a whistle. Like, I'm just, like, there's just so many massive songs that have a whistle in it. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, I love it. Yeah, what's not up with the whistle?
Yeah, like it almost didn't make it. Like I was like, does this immediately turn the song into like a corny disaster? But then I was like, people love to hear that kind of thing. And like, even if it's like the first time you hear it, you're like, what? And then like you listen again and you're like, oh, this is fully like very a part of the hook, you know?
Yeah, and I would say too, like it's pretty tucked in there. Like it's not like you're relying on the whistle as like your main thing.
No, I didn't go full Bobby McFerrin yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
He does, you would know the, he cover, actually, I don't even know if it's a cover if he wrote it, but he plays Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like body percussion and like, it's like kind of a cappella. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, like
but he's got some serious whistling.
Love it. Like a cappella one drop reggae.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sick. Well, I think that concludes my questions portion of talking about this song, but if there's anything you wanted to add about it, would be happy to make space for that.
I don't think so. I think we should talk about your opening track, which is like, I guess this is a little bit of like a spoiler alert, as your album has not yet dropped at the time of recording this podcast, but you know, pending podcast release, maybe I don't know, maybe it'll be out before, maybe not. Yeah. But yeah, like let's just jump into track 1, Sweet, on your album. It's so cool to have a prologue to an album, and like it's something that I don't think I've ever done. I know like a few artists I've worked with have done a bit of like an intro track, which this does feel intro in that it's an instrumental, you know, and you are, you know, deeply in the world of singer-songwriter and like lyricism.
I'm entrenched.
Yeah, so it's interesting to throw it instrumental only, because I do think like the lyrics are such a big part of your project.
Yeah.
So it starts like with like something that is very like found sounds, ambient, non-musical, or non like it doesn't sound like something you played, but I am curious like what the context is and why these like sort of non-instrument sounds appear.
Yeah. So I think this song kind of emerged maybe halfway through the songs on the record, just in terms of like when it came to me, when I started working on it. I had the idea to use like field recordings just from my iPhone. I think it's just 2 different field recordings, like hard panned or something like that. But it's really just Bushwick. It's like I live in Brooklyn. I just wanted to get a little bit of environment sound, even if it's abstract and more staticky than it actually sounds like usually here. Usually there's like loud music and sirens all the time. So I wanted to start with that, and then just keeping it an instrumental track was more of a coincidence, I guess. The origins for the song came from a lesson, like a guitar lesson that I had with an adult student, where they wanted to learn Sweet Child of Mine. And, you know, that's like a pretty difficult riff to play. Like, it's fast, it's a lead part. But she was like very much a beginner at her instrument, but she was like really set. Like, no, I really want to learn this. Like, please just teach me. We'll break it down. So we did. We started really slow. It was like trudging. So I always try to like accompany people and like encourage them to keep going. Like, I don't want to just like stare at them when they're playing. The whole, like, it's just kind of weird. So like I'll play with them, and I started to play these chords underneath that just sounded like really sad and beautiful to me. And so anyways, I was like, can I record a bit of this? And what I did was, because I was like, this actually sounds so cool. Like, I just want to go home and put this in my little, you know, interface as an experiment. And so I ended up using like a baritone guitar tuned to like drop A. You just take the low B string and tune it down a whole step. So it's like super low. It sounds really heavy. I ended up figuring out how to play the chords on that. And then I played the like Sweet Child of Mine riff with the harmonics of a standard tuned guitar, and then tuned that down to fit the baritone tuning. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, the melody that's playing is like pretty much straight up Sweet Child of Mine. That's why I named it Sweet. So like that just seemed funny to me. It's like pretty much a bit, but it's also like a heavy, like, to me it sounds pretty beautiful song. So I thought it was worth keeping. And it just gave me joy in like a period where I think I was struggling mental health wise quite a bit, which is especially why like down tempo stuff was appealing to me, I think. Because I just like felt down tempo emotionally.
The only medicine was Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like also like taking that super out of context. Like,
yeah, I didn't catch it. I mean, I didn't hear it and was like, is that Sweet Child of Mine? You know?
Okay, yeah. I thought people would. Like, I sent it to my bandmates, and they're just like, this is awesome. I'm like, right, but what else is it? Do you catch that? And like nobody figured that out. So I'm not trying to hide that at all. I just thought people would get it, and I figured like I think that's probably fine to do.
Yeah, I really didn't catch it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So in terms of the sounds, the pitch guitars are really warbly and stuff, and it just makes it sound like kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
The goal.
And you did that all in the computer.
Yes, the guitars are DI. I don't have an amp here. I wish I did with like a little mic.
Yeah.
I really want to get that. But yeah, it's all DI. Yeah. And then like using Ableton's transpose function.
Yeah.
On some of them, and then I think some of them using other plugins like Alter Boy or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also like a vocal that kind of appears, but it's like spoken maybe, like, and I was kind of curious, like what was the intent of like both leaving it completely instrumental, but then also like you do kind of like for a second I'm kind of like, is there about to be singing? Like, and then also like something that you're playing with as a producer is like, how do you, like, you're kind of like playing with time, you know, and expectations. And so it's like the whole time you're kind of like is there going to be a song on top of this? And then you hear a
What are
vocal,
we
and you're like,
doing?
okay, maybe this is it. And
What are
then,
we doing?
yeah, so what's the intention there?
Yeah. So I had Sweet working as an entirely instrumental track without the vocal garble sample-y thing. But then as I was figuring out the sequence of the record, it's 8 songs, so it's pretty short. But I decided that it worked best as an opening track. And so I wanted to put something in it that would maybe foreshadow the rest of the record, since it is an instrumental track and none of the other tracks are. That's not typical for me. So I took a vocal sample from the song from the Dead, it's called, and it's a line from the chorus. It's a question. It just says, "What am I to do now?" And I just put that in the song and like definitely fucked it up, pitched it or something. I can't exactly remember. And like it definitely has like time warping on it, like time stretching. So it's kind of like torn apart in I don't know, it's just messed up. But maybe somebody will like hear, I don't know. I wanted to foreshadow that song coming up. I think it's like track 4 or something. So maybe once you get familiar with track 4, and if you were to go back and hear track 1, you might be like, wait, is this that? Or did I take too many CBD gummies, or what's going on? Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, either way, I thought it was a good way to open the record.
It's awesome. That's really cool. Like, I love leaving the idea of like leaving some Easter eggs that like don't really make sense until later in the album. I guess that sort of segues to my next question, which is like, how does this serve as like the forward or like prologue to your album?
I think in just being a sort of maybe downtrodden is like too dramatic of a word, but like when I hear the song, I'm like kind of like, it's a bit of a gut punch just in terms of the range that it occupies, like sonically, with, you know, really low tuned guitars. It's like heavier, like it has a weight to it. And like I said, this record was definitely written in a period when I was in definitely like a heavier place, dealing with depression. That's pretty intense. Like, thankfully I'm feeling a lot better now, and have access to like mental health resources that I definitely did not at the time. And yeah, so I was really struggling. And you know, music has always been something that's soothed me, whether I'm feeling super stoked or not very stoked on life. So, you know, it's something that was meant to, like, it just was soothing to me as an exercise of hearing it and making something that I felt like was a little beautiful. And so, yeah, it's just meant to kind of be this like heavier thing to kind of set the tone of like, you're not going to hear like an up-tempo banger on this album. That's not what this one is for.
For sure.
So, yeah.
But you do hear a bit of like a lighter touch. Like, this is definitely the like sort of thickest, heaviest, fuzziest. You know, I feel like this is, you start in a place of like dense sound, and then there's like, you know, like there's other tracks that have heavy sounds, but like I do feel like you like, you know, you're using acoustic guitars, like your voice is like in this sort of band of air, and like it is like, it has like that sort of like light songwriterly touch in a lot of the music. So I mean, I wrote down what inspired this choice. I guess I know the answer is Hollywood's own Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, that's actually where it came from. Like, it started with Sweet Child of Mine and me being depressed, and then my brain just like mixing something up and having fun, like entertaining myself as a bit. But then it also was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's so cool. It's such like it's like music that like sometimes like evades my own style, where I'm so like enraptured by this type of music, and like especially when it becomes like even longer form, like you know, you're getting into like 7-minute instrumentals, and I'm like, how, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, how does this like, what, you know, I feel interested the entire time, and I'm like, how, kind of like, it feels like a bit of a magic trick to me still, as far as like production and music making goes, where like that, the impact of like something no vocals and like seemingly a little bit of abstract form is compelling.
Oh,
So
totally. Yeah. I think like if at least what I love about a lot of ambient and instrumental music that I resonate or that resonates with me is that it'll leave space in the forefront, and then your mind begins to wander naturally, like you're having thoughts, but hopefully the music is sort of like inspiring different colors or shades of reflection or thoughts,
yeah,
and hopefully you're enjoying it. So I
yeah,
suppose you could create something so fucked up that actually, yeah, just like creeps somebody out and makes them uncomfortable. But yeah, most of the stuff I like is like it just kind of encourages reflection and introspection in a way that ends up inevitably being unique to the listener and probably unique to like each time they go to listen is slightly different.
yeah. Yeah, so are you thinking of this as having form, or were you trying to like like set out to be like this? There's an A section and a B section, or were you just like go?
Yeah, mine wasn't that deep. I really just wanted to create something that like was a short little montage, if you will,
Got it.
like a palette
Cool.
that felt good to be in, would sound cool live, and it kind of like as it builds, there's like it kind of gets heavier, at least with the drums. Like it ends up being like quarter note crash,
Yeah,
which is like kind of ridiculous, but I think it earns it, hopefully. And
yeah,
yeah, so just kind of having these tiers and then kind of crescendoing out at the end. So yeah, just a little taster. But maybe in the
that's
future
cool.
we'll do longer instrumental tracks.
I mean, it's cool. Like, there's definitely something post rock
Yeah,
about it that's really fun and like expansive, and it is so short, but it does feel like there's places that it goes to in like a short amount of time. You know, it's very cool.
thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all I had on this tune. Um, yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah, well, I think we're at a pretty good place for time as well.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Do you want to quickly mention that, any details about your upcoming tour?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
new album Power came out on August 23rd. So it's like just about 2 weeks old now at the time of recording, which is really exciting. And my band Illuminati Hotties will be touring this album. First show, I think, is September 25th, so later this month. And we're just starting on the West Coast and then making our way across the Midwest, coming down the East Coast, a little bit through the South. We're kind of just doing full US big
Yeah.
cities.
The lasso.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see some of the listeners out there on the road if you haven't bought tickets yet. I know that there are still tickets available in some cities, and I'm really excited. It's going to be an interesting experiment to be able to play all this stuff live. Like you said before, it feels like a new era in like a really exciting way for me. And I love to see the music connecting with like a different crowd than I think we're used to reaching. And I'm really excited to see how that translates to a live experience, like who's going to be in the crowd, you know?
Yeah. I can't wait for some of that added tenderness and
Yeah.
just the songs are so wonderful. I'm really excited to see how the sets play out live.
Thank you. I'm really excited too. Yeah.
Well, tremendously exciting. Should I plug my
And
own
you-
thing now? Yeah.
Yeah. You have new stuff.
Yeah. So my new record comes out September 27th. It's called Every Dog. And we'll be announcing some stuff soon, but there is an album release show in New York on October 4th at Cassette, and we'll be doing subsequent, I think like East Coast runs after that, so very excited.
And you have a single that's out. You have two singles out.
Yeah.
You just put one out though.
That's right. So the two singles are Radio Shower and Every Dog title track. Yeah, out on Snack Shack Tracks.
Woo! And
Plug
Anxiety
it.
Blanket. Shout out Jake Tittle.
That's right.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, I'm really excited. Are we on tour at the same time, or do we get to see each other?
I am still figuring that out. I've
Okay,
been
cool.
like really behind on booking.
Got it.
So we'll just see what happens. But
Cool.
I'm really wanting to make it. A New York show is October 18th. I believe it's a Friday.
Your show is the 18th?
No, sorry, yours is.
Oh, I was like, my show's
Yeah.
the 18th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mine is October 4th in New York City. But
Okay, got it.
will,
I was about to be devastated that you were playing and I would be there and I also couldn't go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm definitely gonna be at y'all's show when you come through.
Okay. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. Well, this is fun.
Yeah, this probably concludes our first episode of SongDive.
Woo.
I think it's a pretty good name.
It's a great name. I think it's great. It makes perfect sense, you know?
Yeah, I think you kind of know what it's
It
about.
is as
hopefully.
advertised.
Yeah, like it's not nautical themed. We're not like on a boat, but we're like diving in. Like, let's dive in. All right. Well, cool. This was so fun. Thanks for making time for it.
Thanks for putting this together. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's a total learning experience for me. This is definitely the first podcast I've ever been on. Might as well be our own. But awesome. I'm really excited to get into, future episodes and learn more about the album that you've made.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Well, have a wonderful day. Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.